side. CJ I never got roll with ice. No rush, go move dumb. Pushing, so move dumb. Peace and love turn to peace and gloves. Now you gotta do it right now.
Well, I'm back from Romaniacs, and I'm on my way up to a local XC race in Ontario. Doubleheader this weekend. It's a long drive, and as I was heading up, I've been thinking a lot about my experience at Romaniacs, my first time there, and the things I've taken from it. I guess you could say some of the lessons I've learned, some of the perspectives it's given me, and I thought it might be helpful for people who are thinking about heading over, or perhaps those who've gone before. You may get something from this video of some of the things that I learned along the way that perhaps you didn't experience. I'm always watching videos myself when I do these sorts of things, and I thought I'd share my thoughts. So this video is just going to be me talking to the camera, and I may try and insert some footage, relevant footage of what I'm talking about if I happen to have it within my footage of my time there. But as you know, they don't let you record any GoPro while you're actually racing. You can for the prologue, but anything beyond that, they won't let you run a GoPro. However, we were able to get quite a bit of footage outside of the race, but also, as I'll talk about, I actually didn't finish Romaniacs. I'm still very proud of what I did. I have no regrets, and I absolutely love that I tried and accomplished a lot within silver, but I wasn't able to get that finisher medal. But as a result of that, I did end up getting out with my friends Chris and Tony on the off-road day 3. We took the bikes out, and I got a lot of fantastic footage that I wouldn't otherwise. So you'll be able to see some of that. Let's start from the beginning. So first of all, what is Romaniacs? I don't want to get too much into that, because if you're watching this video, you probably know. But what is hard to impress upon anyone who hasn't been there, and this would be myself as well, is just the magnitude of this race. And as you go over, everyone will say to you, it's hard to put into perspective. It's hard to describe how big the mountains are, how high, how long the hills are up and down, and there's a lot of truth to that. But Romaniacs is essentially, I think their tagline is essentially the toughest rally enduro in the world, and it's hard to believe that it isn't. It is hands down one of the toughest enduro races in the world for hard enduro. I think you could only compare it perhaps to Erzberg, which I've also done, but that's a very different beast, and perhaps I'll talk a little bit about that. But my experience in Erzberg really is completely different from where it was in Romaniacs. Erzberg to me was more of almost like going to a hard enduro rock concert. Everything is contained within the mines. The vibe is very active. I'd say it's a lot more energetic and positive, if I could put it that way. When we went, there was just a lot of excitement about the race itself, and there's a lot of spectacle going on with Erzberg, and whatever is going on, you're right there in the action, whether it's the beer tent or the party or the parade through town. And don't get me wrong, Red Bull Romaniacs has a lot of that, but it's different. It's far more spread out, and because Romaniacs is over the week, it's not a weekend party, if I could put it that way. It's very much a long-term commitment in a race, and because of that, the feeling of it is very different. It's still a great feeling. It's a unique experience. I'm just saying it's very different than Erzberg. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to take much from Erzberg and pass it over to Romaniacs. Although there were a couple lessons, and I'll get into that. So I think the best way to talk about Romaniacs is just to start from the beginning, as if you or I are signing up again, and how I would look at it this time. And the first question you have to ask yourself is, why am I doing this? And that may seem trite, it may seem like a silly question, but more and more as you sign up for things, and the class that you sign up for, and the bikes you rent, and the services you obtain, everything really comes back to that question, why am I doing this? And what I will say about that is I think it's really important that you don't get caught up into the typical response, and that is to finish it. Obviously that's a great goal, and I would say most people's goal, but to say you've finished Red Bull Romaniacs itself is unclear, because what did you finish? Did you finish the Atom class, the Iron class, the Bronze class, the Silver class, or the Gold class? And so to just try and put everything into finish, I think you have to dig a little bit deeper and ask yourself, what does it mean to you to finish? What is it that you're going to walk away with a really valuable goal? So for me, my goal, in a sense, was to finish, but that wasn't the primary goal. My primary goal in signing up for this particular Red Bull Romaniacs, and this may change in the future, but for this Red Bull Romaniacs, I really wanted to see what I was capable of with my age, with my training. You know, I'm 46 years old, and I trained extremely hard, both in skill and fitness, to get where I was, to see whether or not I could complete silver. And so in a sense it's my goal, but really my goal was to see what I was capable of. And the silver class, for me anyway, very much showed me what I was capable of, and also what I was not capable of. I'll just qualify that a little bit. I do think under other circumstances, I could have finished silver. The first off-road day that we had a torrential storm come in, and it just completely destroyed the course. And I don't know if I should talk about it now. I'll return to that. But just on the topic of finishing, one thing that you have to appreciate too with Red Bull Romaniacs is there's a lot within your control, but there sure is a lot out of your control. And within those parameters, even the best riders are only going to be able to prepare so much. So if you're pushing the limits of what you're capable of, as I was trying to do, and I knew very well that doing silver, my chances were not great, we'll put it that way. And so if the threshold of where my window is of whether I can do it or not, as soon as those limits start to change a little bit because of weather, then it significantly, if not it completely destroyed my chances of succeeding, because I know with absolute certainty there's no way I could do silver in the terrain that was there, in the storm that was there. But no one expected that storm. And keep in mind, silver does a lot of the gold class lines, and my friends and I joke because now whenever I see the letters GS, so when you get to a line where gold's going one way, it may say G, but if it's gold silver, it'll say GS, or BI for bronze iron. When I saw GS, that means I'm in for a real sufferfest. So some of these GS lines were gold lines as well, not strictly gold, but that doesn't mean they aren't exceptionally hard and still on par with some of the gold lines. I mean, they are gold lines, and those things in the rain, they were freaky because, you know, starting off strong, I made it to the checkpoint. It was not easy by any stretch, but I made it to the checkpoint. I was within time, and I'd done maybe 3 or 4 silvers and golds at that line, and I felt like I could do this. But then once we hit the checkpoint, the storm came in, and this was a historical storm from what the accounts were. And you may have seen some of the footage of Manny trying to get up and all the other pro riders. It was brutal, and the dirt there in Romania is absolutely amazing when it's dry. The traction you get on this dirt up mountains is unbelievable. You can put your bike almost vertical and still crawl it up. But when it gets wet, and it turns into like an axle grease, it turns into this clay that makes it extremely difficult. And I'm not exaggerating. You can look at any of the footage of the pros to see exactly what I'm talking about. But to make matters worse, I mean, the climbs are one thing, but what happened in the storm is silvers and golds would often get sent down mountains and then back up and down mountains. So we're doing really aggressive climbs up and down. That would be the same for other classes as well, but obviously they're going to ramp it up as the classes go. But some of the descents going into these ravines, you literally could not do anything with your bike. Like bulldogging would be a luxury in those instances. You'd have to sometimes just let your bike slide down. And one thing that was really eye-opening to me with Romaniacs in this respect, and maybe this will tie well back into what goals you have before I start talking about how to approach this. But one of the things I quickly realized that was different from the US hard enduro scene is you are very much on your own when you're out there. When they say bring a foil blanket and you might be sleeping in the woods, they are not joking. That is not sort of a dramatic statement to make it seem more extreme than it is. I very much thought on off-road day one, after the service point, when we dropped into a ravine, it slid down this huge mountain, and then there was a small platform and a river. So there's no way out other than to go back up. And these mountains are this clay. So thankfully on off-road day one, a Venezuelan rider, Pablo, so if you're watching this, Pablo, thank you. He and I were able to essentially rescue each other out of this ravine. And if he wasn't there, I don't know what would happen, because there were guys that were top riders you could see in their country, and they were just kind of going up and down, up and down. No one could get out of this one part. And I know that one person did actually spend the night in the woods, not, I don't know where, but people were getting picked up at 9 p.m. at night in the dark. Our crews were looking for it. So bottom line is, you can't approach this like this is something from the US hard enduro where no matter how bad the 6 hour goes, you can just still get on the trail and get back to your truck and head home. And that was, I think that threw me for a bit of a psychological turn, because after that, obviously I was very tired and exhausted, but I think it was more than that. I think it was my body was working at such a degree to survive that it started to completely break down my recovery. And I don't know whether it was the food or whatever, but I was actually really sick on the second off-road day, and I wasn't going to go and do it, but I did get up and do it. But ever since after that first day, I was quite ill, and my friend Chris, unfortunately for him, he's come so far and trained so hard, and he's such a great rider now, but he was so sick that he couldn't do the second day of Romaniacs, and because of that illness, he was disqualified, and I was disqualified after the second day as well, but I was able to get out and at least try. But what happens in Romaniacs is you get one day in your off-roads of four off-road days. You get one day where you can not complete, they call that a time bar, and you can still finish the race. You can still receive a finisher medal if you finish 3 of the off-road days. You may not obviously be competitive for a podium, but you're still considered a finisher. But once you've not completed 2 off-road days, then you're time barred and you're no longer allowed to receive your GPS tracks to go out and do the race again. You can still go out, and I'll talk about that in a second, but as far as the race goes, you're done after 2 days. So minimum, even if you sign up for something very difficult and you can't get it done or whatever, you're sick, you still minimum get your prologue in, you get your off-road day 1, and you get your off-road day 2. And so you get 3 days of riding, and don't be too concerned if that, you get kicked out of the third day, because like Tony, Chris, and I, on the third off-road day, which is essentially day 4, they still give you tracks to go out and do a tour ride, and you can make that as easy or difficult as you want. They essentially send you along the atom and iron lines to follow along the race and end up at the same finish line and checkpoints as everyone else does, and they do that for both days. So that was one thing that was really important to know, because if you go over there and think, well, I really, I could get kicked out and it's a big waste of money, it isn't at all. Again, it comes back to your goals, because for me, I didn't consider it a waste at all. I still got in as much riding as I wanted to, and perhaps more, even though I got disqualified, because I was able to do those additional days of riding. And in fact, the third day of riding with Chris and Tony was probably my most enjoyable, well, definitely my most enjoyable and my most memorable, because you could actually stop and look at the scenery and have a laugh and get chased by a wolf and everything like that. So so don't be too concerned about riding itself. If your goal is to complete the medal and get the medal, then obviously you don't want to get disqualified. Okay, so that was a really long sidebar, but hopefully that's helpful in getting back to my original point, and that is, why are you doing this? Okay, so if the goal is, I want to complete Romaniacs, then the question is, how important is that to you? Is that like 100% thing? Because if it's a 100% thing, then you really have to think, I want to do a class that I know I'm capable of. You want to be challenging, and they're under all of the classes, whether it's atom, iron, or bronze, or certainly silver and gold, all of them are challenging. So just because you sign up for atom doesn't in any way mean it's a kid's ride or anything like that. It is an extremely challenging, long ride over lots of double track that you will absolutely love. And if you know your riding is something where you absolutely want to complete it, but you're not sure whether you would be able to complete bronze or not, then just do atom. And then you can sort of evaluate yourself from there. I can tell you next time, if I were to go again, maybe one day I'd like to take my sons and we can all do it together. My goal will be very different, because I now know not just what I'm capable and not capable of, but I also know what silver is like. And as beautiful as it is, and as amazing it was to see things that other classes wouldn't see, like going up mountainsides that are extremely treacherous, and views that you can't believe you're actually riding on because it's just so dangerous and difficult. That is awesome and can't be replicated. But I wouldn't say like when to get there, you don't have a smile on your face. You are working hard and putting yourself in some pretty precarious spots. So if I went again, I think I would actually do iron. It's something where even atom, if I went with my sons, I think that would be a really enjoyable ride, that you can just see the beautiful Romanian countryside and do something similar to what Chris and I did on the off-road day when we were all disqualified and just watching the race. So again, purpose. Why are you doing Romaniacs? Forget ego, forget what other people may talk about or what they think. You really have to do this race for yourself, and you really have to ask yourself on a deep level, what do I want out of this? Do I want the best experience and memories for me? Or maybe it is more important to come back and flash your medal and say you finished it. And that's great. I mean, it'd be awesome to have a medal. I don't have one. But for me personally, I just wanted to look at it this way this time, and then maybe another time differently. But you really have to ask yourself that question. So now that you know what class you want to run in, and there's lots of resources that Romaniacs puts out there on what class you can run in, I would say like you'd have to then decide with absolute certainty this or whatever year it is the year I'm going to do it. Waffling on Romaniacs is not going to help you. I think the best way to do it is to get 2 or 3 solid people, and the more people you can get, the better. But get 2 or 3 solid, committed people to say, this is our year, or next year is our year, or 2026 is our year, and we are doing it with 100% certainty. And when you know that, I would recommend that you register as soon as possible, which includes the possibility of pre-registering what we did. The sooner you can register, a lot of good things happen. So you actually get priority to accommodations. So you'll get access to, for example, the Ramada, where everything is out of. If you can stay in the Ramada, I recommend that, because that's where most of the top pros will stay. That's where all the breakfast is and meals are every morning and evening. It's just so nice to be right in the hub and come back to your hotel and be able to press an elevator button, go down and get breakfast, come back up and get something. That's where everyone is operating. So if you can stay in the Ramada, stay there. But again, it comes back to registering early and paying for that accommodation early so that you can get in queue to get into the Ramada. If you're going to jump into a Romaniacs trip last minute, still be great, but this video is about giving you those little tips that are going to make it better. So commit, and commit early, and don't commit with the possibility of, you know, maybe I'll go, maybe I won't. Find your crew, find your year, and commit with 100% certainty. Choose your class, and choose it wisely and choose it decisively, because they do not let you flip back and forth. If you end up wanting to change classes, they may let you do it once, but they're not going to let you do it when you get there if something has happened. They're very, very firm on that. All right, and once you've done that, obviously flights. Flights is its own strategy, but I would recommend, if you're going to do this once in a lifetime kind of trip, just spend the extra money and fly business class. There's lots of ways to get business class relatively inexpensive if you have lots of time to think about it. You can buy your ticket, upgrade your ticket, but having that additional luggage and additional space on a long flight where you need to be rested, you don't want to be jet lagged, it's so worth it. It may be $1,000, couple $1,000 more return if you do it right, but it was one of the best things that I paid for heading over there. Additional luggage and just peace of mind, and everything is so much easier. As far as getting there early, so some people decided they wanted to go over and ride early. I didn't do that, so my opinion perhaps isn't as informed as I'd like it to be, but frankly, I didn't see it all that important. When you get there to Romaniacs, once you get your bike, they actually give you some GPS trails in advance that you can go out and ride in the mountains, including the final hill called Gushtarita, and you can go there and play around with your bike, play around with your suspension, and it's really fun. And you have to be a little careful, because tour companies, they obviously, not faulting them in any way, they're a business, they want to make money, but they don't really care whether you finish your race or not. So if you sign up for a 150 kilometer ride 2 days before Romaniacs, it's certainly not something I would do, because it is a tiring week. And if you're kind of recovering from a trip, even if it's a casual trip, that's not going to be easy. And anything with tours that I heard about is they're going to want to take you out and see cool stuff, which means hard stuff. And it's easy to break your bikes, it's easy to get injured, it's easy to get tired. So it's nice to be able to get used to the terrain, but I really think that the GPS tracks that they give you, you can do that if you want. And you can spend as much time out there. So they just give you the tracks, and while Romaniacs is going on anyway, you can just ride your dirt bike all through the city, at least on the trails that they've given you through the GPS, and ride up to the areas into the mountains and play around. It's not going to be a big tour, but if the purpose is to get used to the terrain and test your bike out, then it will serve that purpose. A little side tip on that is they give you the GPS tracks in advance. Put them either on your phone using like Garmin Explore, or I have a Garmin watch that I put it on. It was awesome. I could just see where I was going all the time. And the reason I say that is when you go to register, which they call Inscription, you have to hand in your GPS if you want to be fully registered. And there are some advanced times to do that are right around the same time as the GPS rides. So you may want to register, but you can't get fully registered because you want to use your GPS to do the ride. So you can either hand in one of your GPSs and then go, or you can have it on your phone or watch or another GPS and then get fully inscribed and then still go out. So that's just a little tip, because some of the guys I was with didn't want to hand in their GPS yet because they were using it for the ride. But I was able to get all my stuff fully inscribed before the crowds and then go out on this ride. As far as registration goes, I'm going to return to that because I'm going to go grab some breakfast. Where was I? I just ate my breakfast. I got a coffee. So I was going to talk about registration, but I think I actually want to talk about back up a little bit when you're registering for everything, and it's talking about flights and everything like that. One of the big questions always is how much it's going to cost, and I sort of throw around business class like it's no big deal. It is a big deal, and the point I'm making is this trip is going to be expensive. If you're trying to look ways to cut costs and everything like that, just don't do it. Wait until you've got the money to be a little bit extravagant on this, because if you're trying to save $2,000 total, you're not going to have the same type of experience. And that starts with everything from the rental company, shuttle service, parts, everything like that. You can be smart about this, but you really can't do it in a way that anyone looking at it would say it was a relatively inexpensive trip. If you want to do an inexpensive trip and something similar, then go do a tour in Serbia or something like that. Very, very good cost for a similar experience that's not racing. But if you want to do Red Bull Romaniacs, then you're just going to have to accept that you're going to be paying a lot of money for this. I'm not even going to try and give an estimate, because that really just depends on everyone's perspective. But just keep in mind small stuff like when you get there, there's souvenirs. There's bike upgrades you might want to have. There's dinners out with everyone. It just adds up. It's a vacation on top of a big race, of a lifetime race. So you have to look at it this way, that this is not a trip where you're going to be saving money. All right, so now let's talk about what sort of bike rental. Lots of options for you. I was quite impressed with how new and good the local outfitters were. From walking around, I saw people had almost every paddock had absolutely beautiful bikes, new bikes, KTMs, Betas, Huskies. We went with Huskies and we went with the Jarvis team. And that was really cool. The bikes were amazing, and the nice thing about Jarvis's team is they were tweaking in a way that as if Jarvis himself would be riding them. So they had enhanced ECUs, weighted flywheels, the best tires you can get, the Michelin Extreme Enduros, and just a lot of things that really made the bikes perform extremely well. The team rents Huskies, and to be honest, I would have preferred to have a KTM. As you can see, that's what I ride, and it's definitely my bike of preference. I'm not saying the Huskies didn't ride really, really well, but it's not ideal to be kind of learning all the quirks of a Husky. And maybe I'm just a bit bitter too, because I ended up breaking a subframe and in the prologue, and that just kind of set the tone from early on that Husky perhaps isn't my brand. I'm a bit rough on things, but the bikes were amazing. The team was fantastic, and that's another thing you just can't skimp on, is get the best bike you can and get the best support you can. You need support. You cannot do this on your own, and that's why I said earlier you really need to pick your sort of ride or die crew to go over with. The more people, the better. When we were there, there was a group from New Zealand that must have had 20, 30 people, and that type of support, I can't stress how important that is and how nice it is to have people around to be able to just help you out, especially those that maybe got kicked out of the race early or just there spectating. But on top of that, you need support for your actual bike rental. So if you're going to go over and think, I'm just going to rent a bike and then figure it out, that will not work. Just period. It will not work. You need a bike support. You're going to break stuff. You need mechanics to be fixing it. You may not get back to 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night. You don't have time to be changing mousses, anything like that. You need to be going in there with the support that factory riders will have. You need to do other things like rest and eat and race. You don't have time to be wrenching on bikes. The other thing you need to get is a shuttle service. In my opinion, that's not an option either. I suppose there's ways around it. You could rent a car and try and meet your race team every day at the various locations, but they're not the same locations that the race is going to finish at. So not having a shuttle service or at least someone there who can drive you is impossible. I don't know how you would do it. So again, shuttle service. They say it's an option. All these things are optional, and you think, oh, maybe that's a way to save money. They're not optional. Unless you've got a very strong solution and an understanding of why you don't need it, then don't risk it. We had a good shuttle service, and even then it was difficult to manage with the amount of pickups that need to be done in the morning and drop-offs. And because what happens is once you start qualifying in your days, that's going to determine where you start the next day. So let's say I start at 9 o'clock and then another rider starts at 6 a.m. Well, that rider needs to be taken in advance. And either, there's going to be 2 or 3 shuttles going out or more with the team, or you may have to go there early and wait. But having the ability to just stand in front of your hotel at a designated time that they've figured out, and they know where they're going, and they know the times, and they know the pickups, and all that sort of stuff. All you need to do is stand in front of your hotel at 7:30 in the morning with your gear on. That is a huge relief. So get a shuttle service, get a good racer team, get a good bike. There's so many things that can go wrong in Romaniacs that for the things that you have control over, that you can fix with money, do it in advance. Don't try and make your chances of whatever your goals are so low that you've kind of set yourself up for failure by not doing what is necessary to make that success happen. All right, so shuttles. So the way it kind of works every morning is they'll drop you off at a particular location with your time, depending on your qualifications from the day before, which can include the prologue as well. And then you just start heading out, and they may have 3 or 4 lines, like silver, Adam may get sent off in one line, bronze, silver, gold. Usually it's gold has their own, and then it's silver, and then bronze, and then Adam, iron. Those were the lines I remember. And what would happen is in 30-second increments, they'd send off a silver, they'd send off a bronze, they'd send off a gold, based upon times. So it's really nice. You get there early in the morning, you sit around. It's quite surreal to be sitting in the mountainside and watching the bikes being sent off one by one. And you head out, and one thing to do is, stay fast, but stay consistent. It's a long week, so you really have to pace yourself. As exciting as it is to get sent off in the first instance, just try and, make sure that you've got a good pace going. If you, it's strange because you definitely can't meander, but you definitely don't want to be pushing it where you're going to crash or anything like that, because there's a lot of little things, and that's something perhaps a bit more detailed for this video as far as what to look for. But there are small things on the trail, regardless of what class you're in. It looks like it's wide open, easy single track, but there's all these little like anthill mounds and washouts and stuff like that you really need to be riding well within your abilities. Consistency at a particular time and pace is the key. And so what they will do at every day is they'll tell you the total time you have. Let's say it's 9 hours, and then when they'll also give you the kilometers. So let's say to make it easy, 10 hours and 100 kilometers. So now you know that for every hour I've got to do 10 kilometers, right? So you know that if your average pace drops below that, you're gonna time bar. So that's something that every morning I would reset my GPS, reset my watch, so I know what my average speed is. Not average moving speed. Average speed is for the entire day, including stopping, because if you start to see your time dropping below that, then you've got problems. So you have to be conscious of that. And that's why you need to stay within those parameters of safety. And when you get out into the open stuff, it's tempting to just try and open wide up to try and make up for lost time or get ahead, but you run the risk of having a major crash, and we saw a couple of those, and one guy got taken out in a hospital in a helicopter. So you have to be really careful that way. All right, so now you're out in the trail. Depending on the level that you're riding, you're going to see signs with something like G this way, S this way, B, so gold, silver, bronze, iron, I, or A. Most of the time, the trails combine. So a lot of the time it would be, you'd be going along and it would say BIA this way, and it might say GS this way, which would give, even saying it gives me heart palpitations. But that's how they would often break it up. Sometimes I would see SB, so silver, bronze, or I might see S alone. There were quite a few of those, and that's where you're going to go. The course itself is extremely well marked, despite them saying it's a GPS ride, and it is, and you need a GPS to ride. At no point did I feel like I didn't know where I was going. And perhaps if I was moving at a really fast pace and trying to make sure I'm always on trail, but everywhere you go, you've got these very obvious signs of where the splits are, but also whenever you see a blue ribbon, it means you're on trail. So assuming you made the right split, you're on trail when you see blue ribbons, and they're everywhere. When you see a yellow ribbon, that means you're going the wrong way, and you got to look around now for a blue ribbon. I think I could have done that whole thing without a GPS. In fact, I rarely looked at my GPS when I was actually racing. I was looking at my GPS more when we were doing the ride, the casual ride with Tony and Chris, just because I was checking everything out. But the GPS itself, while mandatory, don't get too hung up on that, because it's very easy. Every morning what they will do is they'll give you your GPS, and you turn it on, or both of them, load it in, and then once you have all your tracks there, it's really just one track you're following, and that track is quite obvious, and you just zoom in or out, and some people will do different zoom levels so they can see one at speed and one in close, but even still, it's not something I was looking down at too much. At the end of the day, you have to give back your GPS, and they will look at the tracks and make sure you did everything on course. They'll scrutinize your GPS, and they will also wipe your GPS. They'll load new tracks and put new batteries back in your GPS, so you don't have to worry about that, about your batteries running out. But you do need to carry a spare pair. I noticed on one day I was right down near the end. I had a spare pair anyway, and I didn't have to go into the batteries, but I had my brightness right up, and I almost burned through on my eTrex 20, which usually lasts a long time. Okay, so GPS every day, give that back. You also will receive like an emergency package every day, and that has to remain sealed unless there was an emergency. So if you're opening that package, you're probably getting disqualified, because what it is, it's a topographical map. In case you're lost, you could get out. Although if you don't know how to read maps very well, it's not going to be all that helpful. But there is an emergency numbers and things like that. Also, you'll see within the registration. There's a long list of things that you need to carry within your pack. No one actually stopped me to check my pack, but that is a possibility that some of the mechanics could stop and make sure that you have all of the essential items. But more importantly, whether you get checked or not, those items are essential. You do need a spare plug or two. With the storm coming in, I thought there were a few occasions I couldn't believe I didn't water my bike out, like way up, like past the seat that we were going through, which surprised me because I didn't think that would be a factor. So spare plugs, foil blanket, as silly as it sounds, I thought I very much was going to be using my foil blanket when I got stuck in that ravine. All those things, and my goodness, get a good windbreaker. My friend Matt Adams from the US told me how important it was to get a good windbreaker, so I got a really good one from Usui, waterproof, windproof, and that thing was such a lifesaver during that storm. And it's not just the storms, but when you're riding on transits after you've been wet and you're freezing cold. One of the riders I was with was coming back on the road, and I thought they were going to die with hypothermia, but thankfully we managed to find the finish quickly and were able to get transferred back. But yeah, you need a good jacket, something that packs up, that's quite waterproof and windproof and packs up into your bag. For packs itself, I use the Usui Raw, I think 13, and that was a great size pack. I actually used a fanny pack as well, a small Usui one, and I ran 2 bladders, one with a carb mixture for nutrition, and then another one with just with waters and electrolytes. And that was another thing that was advised to me that was really helpful, is make sure that one of, at least add the carb mixture or have a separate bladder, because you go through so many calories in a day, and you get to the service point, you can eat. If your service team, yet again another reason to have a good service, will have stuff laid out for you like noodles and fruit or whatever it may be, but you go through a lot of calories. You can't I can't emphasize how many calories you go through when you're doing this sort of stuff. Anyway, the Usui 13 and a fanny pack. The fanny pack was nice because I could just flip it in front of me if I needed my phone or something quick out of the pack. I had some energy gels as well. There's a lot on strategy on what to pack for nutrition, and it's something you definitely can't underestimate. So that might be its own video. I'm just kind of talking high level here. But that's something you definitely want to think about. What is your nutrition? You have to have a nutrition plan. Your typical carrying along energy bars that you might on a long race is not going to be sufficient. You need something a bit more advanced and thought through than that. All right, this may be a bit jumbled, kind of jumping around, but as things are coming to me, I'm just trying to remember what might be helpful. Getting around in Sibiu. They have Ubers and something they call Bolt, which is like Uber. They're very inexpensive. You can get to the airport for $10 with tip. So don't worry too much about that. If you want to rent a car, definitely if you were a spectator or there to support someone, having a car would be really nice. You know, you can run out to the local shops and pick up parts or anything like that. It'd be nice to have it if you wanted to go out and spectate. But as a competitor, I'm glad we didn't rent a car. It's just one more hassle to have to park and everything like that. The Ubers are very good, very quick, very inexpensive. They even have the little scooters that you can ride all around downtown Sibiu, which are kind of fun. They're almost free. You can use that through your Uber. You just swipe in on the scooter. You can go down and get dinner. Eating and the city itself, after every race, we would all kind of meet up together. We use WhatsApp a lot to communicate, and we would all just have our Canadian group, and we'd all meet up for dinner afterwards. And it was really nice way to finish the day, to all talk about what happened during the day and just keep everyone's attitudes up and positive stories of struggle and all of that. You know, I think just really helped everyone feel like they were part of something and gave them the motivation to keep going. It certainly didn't help that Trystan Hart was with us a lot of the dinners, and what an amazing accomplishment for Trystan. The first Canadian ever to hit the podium in Romaniacs, and his level of riding is just unbelievable. And you know, having him there and talking through what was going on in his mind and joking around with him, and that was a really cool experience. So don't forget, it's still meant to be more than just the race. And one thing I really started to embrace is just enjoying the moments. And because now that I look back upon it, as awesome as the moments were on dirt bike, some of the best moments I had too were just sitting around sharing a laugh and a beer with the guys and sharing stories, and it was pretty surreal. Sibiu has great food, again, quite inexpensive. A lot of it's very fresh. There's lots of places you can buy food in the market, in the square, quick eats. Things won't open early enough for breakfast, so I'm talking more about after the race. But once you get back to your hotel and have a shower, there's lots of options to go out and enjoy the city and have a drink and dinner. Another topic of concern for people is the prologue. The prologue, first of all, it is awesome. Don't hesitate. Don't think about it. Just do it. There really, in my opinion, if you've chosen the right class, there really is no decision to be made. If you're going to go to Romaniacs and some of the stuff you're going to be doing anyway, you may as well do the prologue. The excitement of it is amazing. Everyone's there cheering. There's photographs. All that stuff just makes it so worthwhile. And in addition to that, if you do well at the prologue, you're actually going to you're going to put yourself and set yourself up for success. Because with Romaniacs, the prologue is a good example that every time you do well, you're going to be rewarded with a better advantage the next day. If you don't do the prologue, at a minimum, you're going to be put at the back. And if you're in silver class, like I was, you're going to be penalized. I think it was 16 minutes if you did not start, 12 minutes if you didn't finish the prologue. And one thing to keep in mind with a prologue is they're going to modify every class so that it's within what the class should be able to do. So with gold, there is no choice. You have to do it. And they do the full loop, and mostly the gold are doing it because it's a big spectator event for the crowds that are there. And they do that at a different time. But for silver, what they do is they do a sort of a point A to point B run, just straight down the main strip. And all the obstacles are in. There's no sneaking on any of it. So we had, a big jump, and then another big wave jump over a log, a whole bunch of tires, rock garden, 2 rock gardens actually over some excavator scoops. Then over that, we had a couple logs with a chain that I got held up on. And then after that, a big jump that you really have to execute, and that's where I broke my subframe because I slid out as I was going up the jump, and so I had to gas it completely and almost toss the bike onto the platform to save it and myself. But keep in mind, all these extreme things, even in silver, there were ways to get around it and kind of like push and slog your way around it. It would be obviously a lot slower, but it's made so that everyone, as long as they've chosen the right class, is going to be able to do it. For bronze, it was optional, so you don't have to do it. You wouldn't be penalized, but again, you would not set yourself up for success later on. A good example of this is my friend Lance in bronze did really well in the prologue, and he was able to start really early on off-road day 1, which put him well ahead of the storm. And when it came in, he only had 10 kilometers or so to go, and he really set himself up for success to be able to finish off-road day 1. One of the few competitors that was able to get a finish on day 1 and not starting off the entire event with a time bar as everyone else in our group did. So don't underestimate how much fun it is, how much you can put, how much an advantage it is, and how much it's going to be modified for your particular class. So the bronze did have the ability to sneak some of the stuff, and they also had some of the, I guess, sketchier obstacles removed for them so that they didn't need to do that. If you do really well in the prologue and make top 35, you end up going on to the finals, and then the golds have their own finals as well. So you can actually podium within the prologue as well, which is kind of cool. But that's a pretty ambitious goal, to prologue in anything, to hit a podium, anything including the prologue, but that doesn't mean it's not worthwhile. It is, and you won't regret it. The photos are awesome, the cheers are awesome, and it's such a great way to start the race. On the topic of photos, when you sign up at Inscription, you have an option to get a package. The photos that they do there are unbelievable. I couldn't believe the photos that they were coming in and rolling in, and it's not unreasonable what they charge. Just pay it. You know, those memories are priceless, and having a photographer there to be able to capture it all and download them all and share them to your phone and social medias as it's happening is just so cool, and all your friends and family at home want to be able to see what's going on. So highly recommend the photo package. Oh, on a side note, when you're going into Inscription, keep in mind that your photograph is going to be taken as well as a quick interview. So when you go there, it's kind of like photo day, right? Picture day, going there for school. Wear what you want to wear, because that's how your photo is going to be taken for the Red Bull Romaniacs, and it's also, you know, you might want to have just a quick speech, not speech, but just a quick introduction and video prepared, 30 seconds or so of who you are and what you came to do in Romaniacs, because that's the video. A couple other tips from Inscription. I learned the license. I was a little bit freaked out about that. I kept thinking it's going to be a problem, and I heard horror stories. The license, the FIM license that you can buy from Romaniacs, is super easy. Do not worry about that. There's a desk, you show up and you say you'd like to purchase an event license. They say no problem. You have to get in line for a doctor. Oh, incidentally, there's different stations that you have to go to, and there's like 8 stations. Go to the doctor one first, because that's the one that takes the most time. And then from there, I would say do the video one, because that one takes time. Work backwards in what's going to take time, because the lineup starts to really bold up as you go on through in the day. And I had it, and then I lost the flow because I had to run back and grab my passport that you need for the license. So carry your ID with you. Bring your cash. They didn't accept credit card at the time for your license in euro, which is kind of the only place I spent euro the entire trip, is that particular place. Getting my FIM license. I think they take Romanian money as well. And yeah, so just get your license. If you're over 50, you actually have to do an EKG when we were there. The doctor checks you out, make sure you're okay. No medical conditions, all that sort of stuff, and then they give you the green light. Doctor stamps it, you get your license, and then you're good to go for that. Other tips for Inscription, yeah, like I said, do the time-sensitive stuff, time-intensive stuff backwards. Do that first, and then all the other stuff like getting stickers and goggles and handing in your GPS. Actually the GPS one and the phone number stuff took a little bit of time, because you actually have to call the number. So if I was to do it again, the order I would do would be license first, video, and then I would go do emergency number, phone testing, photo package, because you have to pay for that, and that can take a little bit of time. Stuff that doesn't take any time is getting your decals, getting your package of like numbers, getting your goggles. That takes no time at all. And I think that's about it. Inscription and registration aside, when you show up, there's an accommodation desk. You walk up, give your name, and they just tell you where you're staying, and if you have additional days, that's when you pay for the additional days at the actual hotel itself. It is extremely well organized. Races could learn a lot from the way Romaniacs is run, and I really like the way they do the stations. Everything's set up in different stations, and then you essentially get a stamp for each station, and then you go back to the first station and show that you've got all the stamps done, and then they give you your final package, which includes a swag bag of really cool stuff, and then you're inscribed and ready to go. Parts, suspension, all that sort of stuff. Like any type of racing overseas, you do run the risk of not getting your suspension and parts and everything like that. But leaving those flight issues aside, one thing I would recommend whenever you're going to these type of events, especially Red Bull Romaniacs, is the mechanics, as awesome as they are and as knowledgeable as they are all, they have a lot of bikes to work on. And if there's stuff that you can do by bringing your own tools, smaller stuff, you're going to save yourself a lot of time, because what can happen is you get there and there's a bunch of people all waiting for their bikes to be worked on, and even if those mechanics are fast, 15 minutes a bike or half an hour a bike times 10 people, you may just be standing there doing nothing for an hour or two, when all you really need to do is put on your handlebars. So I would recommend bringing the tools, including a torque wrench, of what you need for the parts that you're bringing, because if you can install them yourself, I think you'd rather be doing that quickly and heading off for a beer in the courtyard than you would be standing around a hot paddock waiting for the 10 mil to be available. Tire selection, that was always a bit of a tricky, I wouldn't say contentious, but hard one to assess because it's very individualized. I'll tell you what I used, and you can decide from there. First of all, everyone uses the Michelin Extreme Enduro. It seems like it's the only tire. There's another new one out by X-Grip that looks really good as well. But needless to say, you need an ultra soft gummy that is going to work in the most extreme terrain. Everyone in my group, including all the pros, were using the Michelin Extreme. I think it's fair to say you'll go through, if you're riding well and you want to do well, you have to plan for at least one new rear every off-road day. I don't think it matters much for the prologue, and you could probably get away here and there with flipping a tire, but tires are not easy to come by once you're there, and so you might want to have a new rear for every day. I had 2 fronts, and I only went through 1 front, but keep in mind I didn't actually finish. So if I did it again, I think I'd do 2 fronts, 4 rears, and insofar as the mooses, I mean, to me, the more beat up the moose is, the better. And I only went through 1 moose the entire time. I didn't even go through it. I just used the same one that was on the bike the entire time. So I was actually able to take 2 mooses back with me. The nice thing too, at the end of the race, because these tires are so sought after, it's not hard to unload them. So if you kind of go around at the end of the paddock, at the end of the race, you might very well be able to sell these tires. You obviously would have a bit of a discount than what they'd go for retail, but you'd be able to recover some of your money. Although a lot of the guys, because they're so hard to find, actually brought them back with them to North America. So if you can do that, even better. They just wrap them up with saran wrap and check them as a luggage and paid for that. Another point on luggage, air tags were a lifesaver. The Apple air tags, having the comfort in knowing that your stuff is on the plane is so important. It was nice peace of mind on the way there, but it became even more important on the way back, because our luggage ended up not getting loaded in Sibiu. And had we not known that, we probably would have been sitting around the airport in Toronto forever waiting for it to come, because the airline didn't even know where they were. They were never scanned. So thankfully we were able to see when we got to Toronto, not thankfully, but in a sense thankfully, able to see that they were still in Sibiu, so there's no point in waiting in Toronto. We're all able to go home and then wait for them in the comfort of our home rather than wasting hours at the airport after a long trip. So AirTag everything, AirTag all your luggage, AirTag your packs, everything like that. So there you have it. Lots of information, but I'm really just scratching the surface of what Romaniacs is about. There's so much information, and thankfully they've got a lot of resources on their website that go into detail about a lot of things I'm talking about, but hopefully these little tips will help. And congratulations to Trystan Hart. Just so inspiring to see him get on the podium, the first Canadian ever, and being able to hang out with him and develop that relationship, and the fact that he would take his time and sit down with us all and have dinner. It really meant a lot, and it's one of the most valuable memories I have. So thanks, Trystan, and I look forward to seeing how much further you go with all this, although I don't know how much further you can go. Kind of at the top already, aren't you? Congratulations specifically to Ishtar, who finished iron, bronze, finished iron, Lance and Scott, who finished bronze, crushed some of those days, did really, really well. And to Chris and Tony too, for even though they didn't finish, what an effort, and the amount of riding they did and the skill that they showed was just unbelievable. So as nice as it would be to have that silver medal in my shadow box of memories, with all the other mementos, which include a broken subframe and my numbers and everything like that, it's not something I would trade to not have the memories I did running silver and seeing what I saw and trying what I tried, and experiencing that storm in it all. And I think if you go into Romaniacs with the right goals and right mentality, right support, right budget, it's something that is life-changing. It'll make you a stronger rider, stronger person, really puts into perspective more important things and why you do what you do, not just for riding, but in life. There's a lot of epiphany moments up there on the mountains, and I hope you do it. If you haven't done it yet, get out there and do it. It's worth every cent. Thanks for watching, and I appreciate it if you could like this video and subscribe to the channel. Lots more adventures coming up soon.